Welcome to She is Resilient, a podcast for women on their healing journeys who are ready to start living their most authentic and empowered lives outside of survival mode. I'm your host, Tatiana, trauma and somatic therapist, as well as a holistic coach, and I'm on a mission to help more women heal their nervous systems. Each week, me and my guests are going to get real and vulnerable about the experiences that led us to becoming the empowered and resilient women we are today. You'll leave this podcast with the skills, knowledge, and inspiration to start creating the life you deserve. Because if another woman can do it, so can you. Welcome back to another episode of She is Resilient. Today on the episode, we have Nadja, who is going to share a little bit about her healing journey. But before we get there, Nadja, do you want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me as a guest on today's show. I'm super excited to be here. So, as you said, my name is Nadja. I'm Nadja Hagen, and I'm a self-love coach for high-achieving women. And I help my clients to recover from people pleasing. I teach them to set healthy boundaries and prioritize themselves so that they can build their life intentionally aligned with their values and build mutual and connected relationships without the need to pretend to be someone they are not.
I love that. And we know that so many women need to set more healthy boundaries, both internal and external. I love the topic of boundaries. So I think what you're doing is amazing. So I'm curious to know how you started your healing journey and what were some of the things that were going on in your life that kind of led you to this path?
Yeah, um, to be really honest, I did not have this one specific point in my life where I thought, okay, I need healing. I just noticed that things don't work for me that work for other people. And I didn't know why. I tried out a lot of things, but nothing really worked. And the catalyst, the starting point, I would say, was I was working in investment banking, and my then boss called me in the office. And I was going to the ladies before going to his office, and I was thinking, he's not gonna fire you today. He's not. I don't know. I had this gut feeling. And I
Mhm.
entered his office, and he said, we will have an uncomfortable conversation. I'm gonna fire you today. And I was like, a what?
Oh my
Why? And he told me, because you're not good enough. Your work is, I'm not gonna say the bad word, but
You can swear here. It's totally
okay.
okay.
Yeah, your work is shit. And
Wow.
I was like, okay, can you give me an example? Can you tell me what I could do differently, or what do I need to change to make this work? Because the thing was, 2 days ago, he called me in the office to give me a lot of praise about how good my work was and everything. But in the end, it was like in a classical movie. 30 minutes later, I was standing on the streets with this goddamn box within all my stuff and no job. And I was really, really upset because I just didn't understand what happened here. So that was more or less the starting point. Because afterwards, what I noticed personally is that I've been so identified with what I did that I didn't know who I was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I always was the career woman, the
Hmm.
investment banker, the high achieving, smart woman.
Hmm.
And I was no longer that. So there wasn't much left. And at the same time, I noticed that my friends weren't available anymore because they
Hmm.
actually weren't friends. I had a
Hmm.
huge business network,
Hmm.
but I had no job no longer. So no business with me, no invitations. And the next thing that happened, I think 3 weeks later, my then fiancé broke up with me. So in the end, my whole life got deconstructed and there was nothing left. And I moved back in with my parents, which was pretty shameful.
Yeah.
And it took me half a year to be able to get out of bed in the morning again and not
Mhm.
hiding myself from the world, because I thought, something is deeply wrong with me. But to be
Mm.
honest, I don't know what. That,
Yeah.
I think, was the thing that more or less started it all.
Wow. And I'm curious to know, and I'm sorry if you already said this, but how old were you at this point?
Oh, let me count. I was 29.
Wow. So 29 and you had this career, you had a fiance, you were really kind of doing everything that quote unquote you were supposed to do, and just like that, everything started to fall apart.
Yes, absolutely. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I did everything right. I did everything I was supposed to do, and I had a life that looked perfect on paper.
Mhm.
And then within weeks, nothing, within less than a month, nothing was left.
Wow. What was that experience like for you internally? I'm curious to know even like the emotional symptoms that were coming up for you, or even if it started to affect you physically, behaviorally. Tell us how all of this impacted your life, both internally and externally.
Mhm. The predominant emotion was shame. I was so ashamed that I got fired because I thought my work wasn't good enough. And because I was so identified with it, it meant that I wasn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And behavior wise, yeah, I didn't meet with friends anymore. Behavior wise, it was that I stopped um, being in touch, being in contact with the friends that were left. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to meet anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody because, people were asking, "What are you doing?" And then I needed to tell them, "Oh, nothing. I actually got fired. Awesome. And I still don't have a new job." So um, that was the emotional part and the behavior wise part. But also physically, I noticed that I was much more tired. I felt, I had the symptoms of a burnout,
Yeah.
um, demotivated. I would say a lot of sadness, and I was pretty afraid of the future. So
Hmm.
I wrote applications. I started to get a new job as fast as possible, to make up for this.
Yeah.
But we were in the middle of a banking crisis, so that was pretty hard.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was the state I'm in, and I moved back in with my parents, which
Yeah.
was the worst thing because who wants to move back in with 29? I mean, nobody does, right?
Totally right. Especially when you've been independent, right? You've been doing your own thing, and now again, everything is kind of going away, and you're like, oh, now I need to move back in with my parents. It's almost, and I understand that feeling of like shame coming up because it's like, what just happened? Everything just kind of left in a blink of an eye, right? As you were noticing those feelings of shame, and you were noticing that you were feeling like that fatigue and those symptoms of burnout. I'm curious to know, I know that you mentioned that you started to apply for jobs so that you can make up for the loss, but I'm also curious to know how you began to address what you were experiencing. Did you jump into the healing process right away, or what did that kind of look like for you?
I did jump into any healing right away.
Hmm.
I just started to make up for it, to cover it,
Hmm.
to find a better job so that everything goes back to normal.
Hmm.
And I noticed it took a couple of time. I found a new job, but I never got back into the groove. So something of the "you're not good enough" just stuck with me.
Mhm.
And actually, I think my true healing started when I enrolled for a coaching certification and a proper
Mhm.
coaching training.
Mhm.
And it started with what is actually feedback. And the feedback that I've received has always been critics,
Mhm.
harsh, mean critics, and judgment. So I didn't like feedback at all.
Mhm.
But as a coach, feedback is one of your most valuable tools.
Mhm.
And I learned what feedback is. So I learned that people are taking the time and the effort to
Mhm.
observe me and just share their observation and share with me what they like, what they would like more of, what they would like less of.
Mhm.
But there was no judgment, there was no order in it. I was absolutely free to take this or leave it. And I noticed that's a game changer.
Mhm.
I could, that was a moment where I could start to be who I was without being ashamed to be judged or, ashamed for who I was. And that started an internal healing without even me noticing it at this time.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting, right? Accepting feedback can be really difficult when in the past it has been with judgment or it's been very critical, right? Accepting that feedback, even when people aren't trying to be judgmental or critical, can be really hard. We can start to think that there's something wrong with us, sort of like what you were saying earlier, right? Like it's a reflection of something that I'm doing wrong or something about me as a person, as a human, right? And for you, you started to kind of reframe that and you're like, oh, it doesn't need to be about me. It doesn't need to be about who I am at my core, right? And I'm wondering, what were some of the practices that you started to put in place to kind of continue that reframe for yourself?
So the first thing I started with was, and I think a lot of people start with this, was just change my mindset into
Mhm,
positive thinking.
mhm,
And I thought, when I think positively, the universe will respond and everything will fall into place.
mhm,
And yeah, some things got better
mhm,
because I stopped judging myself and criticizing myself. So that
mhm,
was already a huge success at this time. But I noticed, positive thinking is not, we are not genies. So unfortunately, it's a starting point, but I noticed that there are some things that are deeper layered. And that brought me to subconscious programming, and then even deeper to, oh, our body is listening and our body is remembering things. Actually, sometimes our body, parts of our bodies are like a hardware and they save emotions. So everything that I've stuck down, because I wasn't allowed to feel it, because I needed to be professional and all these things,
mhm,
that was still there somewhere and doing its work without me wanting it to do the work or sometimes even noticing it. And it was like, okay, it's like, like you are opening a room and it's very, very untidy and really messy. And you think, okay, there's a lot to clean up.
mhm.
And then I started to learn practices that were working with the body too.
Yeah, wonderful. And you bring up such a good point because I think that most people, when they start their healing journey, most people start with mindset. And I love how you said that it's such a great starting point because I would completely agree with you that it's a really great starting point, but it's not everything and it can only take you so far, right? Like the positive thinking can only take you so far because like you said, there's something deeper than that. There are layers to our negative thinking. And when we think about like the subconscious, the unconscious, right, it really comes back to our bodies. And so you were just saying how you started to kind of unpack and open up this like can of worms, and it started to feel a little bit messy. And so I'm curious to know, what were some of the things that you started to discover about yourself? Like, where did these things stem from?
One of the first things I learned and discovered was I had a very hard neck, so a lot of neck pain. I was stiff and it made sense. I'm carrying a lot, so of course I have neck pain. Until I learned, no, that's not the natural state of being, even if you carry a lot of responsibility. But
Mhm,
the things that are causing us pain and stiffness and neck and shoulder pain are the things that are too heavy and the things that do not belong to us.
mhm,
So this led me to a discovery journey, you could say.
mhm,
So one of the first tools I learned is EFT. emotional
Mhm.
freedom technique, or a lot of people know this as tapping.
Yep.
And I like this a lot because it's so simple and still it's so powerful, and you can't do anything wrong. So you
Mhm.
only can do it right. So everybody can use it, and
Yeah.
you don't need to pay a lot of money to learn it. I just love it. It has a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
And
And for people who don't know what EFT or emotional freedom tapping is or techniques it is, can you explain a little bit about what that is?
yeah, it's familiar with acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
So we treat acupuncture points on our bodies,
Hmm.
but we don't do it with needles, we do it with our fingertips.
Hmm.
So we have certain points there. You find a lot of pictures, images, descriptions in the internet of specific points you can
Hmm.
touch. I
Hmm.
learned in my journey that they are very valuable, but sometimes your body guides you to different points.
Hmm.
So this too is a naturally evolving journey.
Hmm.
And I learned through tapping that sometimes I sat there and I tapped a specific point.
Hmm.
It always looks kind of weird, but
Uh-huh.
it works. And I noticed emotions coming up, like very strong emotions. And I was wondering, where does this come from?
Hmm.
I'm so enraged and anger right now, but oh wow. So
Hmm.
I have discovered something that was really interesting. That was the
Yeah.
first step.
Totally. Yeah, that is really interesting. I tried EFT once with one of my colleagues, and it was actually really interesting. We were working with something very specific that I was experiencing, and it is really fascinating because like you said, we are kind of using our pressure points like in acupuncture, but we're just using our fingertips, which is so cool. Yeah, and if anyone's listening to this and you've never tried EFT, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a great strategy. And what else did you discover? I kind of interrupted you to talk about EFT a little bit, but
No.
what else were you starting to discover as you started to kind of tap into your body a little bit more?
Yeah, I discovered that my body was actually communicating with me.
Hmm.
And I just didn't listen. I didn't know how to listen at the beginning. And EFT was the first point. It was like, digging a hole, like digging into emotions to see what can I uncover there.
Hmm.
And the next thing, and that's a really, really interesting and valuable lesson, and I think that's valuable for every one of us. The first, I think everybody has already heard the of a dark night of the soul.
Hmm.
We all have heard about it.
Hmm.
But, when you're thinking about the really deep, meaningful questions in life, like,
Hmm.
am I really worth it? Am I
Hmm.
really good enough?
Hmm.
And a lot of emotions and feelings coming up. The time I experienced this, I thought I will probably die
Hmm.
because the emotions are so intense. I think I will not survive this. And that brought me to finally, actually, seriously, finally recognizing I am not my thoughts. I am not the ego. I've heard about the concept and I was aware of it, but there's a difference between knowledge and embodiment, truly understanding something.
Yes.
And that was a point that changed this for me. I noticed, yeah, a part of me was dying, but it wasn't my part. It
Mhm.
was just this part of the ego that was attached to these thoughts and beliefs and identities that were telling me you are not enough, you are not worthy of this and that.
Mhm.
And that was a game changer too.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to um, tune in into my body and my emotions even deep on a deeper level, and not being afraid, not running away from my emotions anymore, because with certainty, I learned and I knew I will survive and I will
Yeah.
come out at the end of the tunnel lighter with more light.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That is so true. Sometimes our emotions just feel so intense and so strong that you're right. If you're not used to connecting to your body, if you're not used to feeling these feelings, then it can really feel like you're going to die. It feels like that emotion is going to take over and you can survive it or get through it. But I love that you said that there is a light at the end of the tunnel because I talk about that all of the time, right? And once you really begin to connect with your body and give yourself that compassion, you can really allow that to flow in and out through your body, right? And then you do realize, like, wow, I just experienced this really intense emotion and I survived it. And I don't feel that way anymore. And that's something that I really hope the audience takes away from this is that even though in the moment it feels so hard, you won't stay in that emotion forever. Emotions are supposed to flow, right? And it's just energy flowing through the body. And so I love that you said that. The other thing that you said was knowing is so different than embodying. I love, love, love that you said that because again, it comes back to connecting with the body. We can know all of the things or we can think all of the things, but that's not where it ends, right? In order to really live our most fulfilling and thriving lives, we need to connect with the body. And also, I think that so many of us kind of attach ourselves to those identities or those narratives, right? Those thoughts that we have about ourselves. And like you said, those thoughts aren't who we are, right? That's not what makes you you. So I appreciate you sharing all of those good points.
Hey there, if you're looking for daily somatic practices to add to your toolbox, I'd love to introduce you to my somatic bundle where I guide you through over 30 somatic tools and practices that support your nervous system by creating the safety that your nervous system requires to move out of survival mode. Just click the link in the show notes and you will get immediate access to my library of tools. See you there.
Oh, thank you.
I'm wondering what were some of the other healing modalities that you dipped your toes into? I know that you said EFT. Did you ever do any talk therapy? Did you ever do any like other modalities like Reiki or energy work? Or tell us what you've
Yeah,
tried.
I've tried a lot. I've tried Reiki. I actually have a second Reiki grade.
Oh, wow.
Um, but for Reiki, I like receiving Reiki,
Hmm.
but I don't use it for specific healing purposes. I use it to calm down. I use it to, when you're very nervous and you would like to sleep at the end of the day and your mind starts, this rat
Hmm.
race, then
Hmm.
Reiki can be very powerful.
Hmm.
But to heal on a deep level, especially when trauma is involved, my personal, it might be different for other people. Just this is just my very unique and personal experience.
Hmm.
But for that, Reiki did not help me that much.
Hmm.
It helps a lot when my daughter, she's 4, she's turning 5 in
Hmm.
February, when she can't fall asleep.
Hmm.
And, I bring her to bed, I rub her belly, and I give her calming and healing and
Hmm.
loving energy.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. So
Yeah.
for that, Reiki is fabulous.
Hmm.
What else? I tried talk therapy,
Hmm.
which is a nice thing to do.
Hmm.
But again, for deep seated, I noticed that a lot of the issues I had came from really deep seated trauma that, I took it on without even realizing it. And, the really tricky thing here is when you're born into a toxic family system, this is all you know, this is your normal. So, um, the first time I noticed something is not okay and not as it's supposed to be in my family, there I was already 35.
Hmm.
And I noticed because a friend, a coach, and a therapist, they were telling me, and I was like, okay, yeah, I don't know. I take your feedback, and I started doing my research, and I was like, oh my God, something's completely off here.
Hmm.
I never even dared to think about this because, my family was happy and healthy and whole and, all this perfect thing.
Hmm.
So that's a very dangerous thing. And it also leads to when we are in a situation like this, to us disconnecting from our true emotions, because when we are children, we very easily notice that something is off. So we
Mm-hmm.
stuck this even deeper down. And then a lot of trauma is building up. And the mean thing here is that we can't access this consciously and mentally anymore. So that brought me to hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I was really, and I'm still blown away. So I enrolled into a specific hypnotherapy education with
Mm-hmm.
one of the best hypnotherapy teachers I could find,
Mm-hmm.
because I noticed that this changed a lot for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so tell us a little bit about what happened after you started to heal your mind, body, soul. What were the things that started to shift in your life as you healed?
The first thing I was able to do was to set, actually, yeah, set healthy boundaries, to
Hmm.
say no,
Hmm.
to say no to other people. And I also learned to be absolutely fine with being with myself.
Hmm.
So I think, the moment you're able to enjoy your alone time and you are not dependent on being with other people anymore,
Hmm.
there's a difference between I enjoy being with other people and I'm dependent on it. But the
Mm.
moment I can be for myself, that's the moment where I can say, no, I don't like how you treat me.
Hmm.
No, that doesn't align.
Hmm.
No, I don't want this. I can start to say no
Yes.
without the fear. And that shifted a lot of things. Some things, in the whole perspective, everything shifted for the better.
Hmm.
But I would like to mention here that it's simple, but it's not always easy, because yeah, when you're saying no to people who are very close to you and to people who are used to you saying yes all the time, that can create a really, yeah, some tension, some drama. And it's not always easy to stick to your no if you wish that a relationship would be different.
Hmm.
And that taught me that I'm actually, in fact, again, mentally, I knew this, but I truly embodied and understood that I can't change other people. They decide who they are, who they want to be, how they want to interact with me and the world, and what they believe, everything about them.
Hmm.
The only power I have is to decide if I want to interact with them and on which level of closeness and intimacy I want to do that or don't want to do that.
Wow, yeah.
So that was quite a journey. And um, yeah, what else shifted? I got to know myself. So I can remember one situation where someone was asking me, "What's your favorite flower?" And I was saying, I wasn't saying anything at the first moment because I thought, oh, I don't know. My mom always said sunflowers are so beautiful because they are so yellow and full of joy. So I said sunflowers. And I was like, I don't know if sunflowers are my favorite flowers. I actually don't know what my favorite flower is. Not even that I do know.
Hmm. Yeah, something so simple and it's like, wait a minute, what do I even like? That's so significant, right? Because I think that even when you don't know yourself, when you don't know what you like, what you don't like, it makes it harder to show up authentically. And it makes it harder to even set boundaries, right? How can you set boundaries if you don't even know what your limits and boundaries are, right? So it kind
Yes.
of goes hand in hand. We're talking about a flower, but it goes beyond just the flower.
Yeah, absolutely. It's significant because it means you don't know who you are, you don't know what you like, you don't know. I'm not even talking about values and alignment.
Mm.
And I absolutely agree. If you don't know yourself, you can't say no because you don't know what you want to say yes to. You say yes to the things you're supposed to say yes to the
Mhm.
things you're supposed to want in life.
Mhm.
And you never get to the point of questioning if this is really what you want.
Mhm.
So the first step in healing is truly to understand and get to know ourselves intimately.
Mhm.
And I started some value work.
Mhm.
So I defined my 3 to 5 most important values, which was an adventure. It was an exciting one at this point in time, you
Mhm.
know. And then I wrote them down on a sticky note and I put it on my fridge
Huh?
so that several times a day I could see it. And I was like, wow, that is profound.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Nadia, I'm curious to know how you would describe yourself now. Who is Nadia today?
I think I wouldn't describe myself that much anymore because I'm pretty complex and pretty simple at the same time. So one of the most important things in my life is being a mom.
Mhm.
That's more a role and a function, but it's also a huge part of me because it's a huge part of my heart.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that is one thing. I would say I'm much more curious than I was
Mhm.
before
Mhm.
because I can allow myself to not know, to
Mhm.
be insecure, to find out.
Mhm.
I think I'm, in most cases, pretty relaxed.
Mhm.
I I think a very, very honest person,
Mhm.
but diplomatic at the same time.
Mhm.
So I've learned to speak my truth and not hurting other people necessarily in doing this.
Mhm.
So, but I think the most important thing about me is that I'm evolving, I'm changing. Today, I'm not who I was a year ago. So
Mhm.
I find it really difficult to tell you this is who I am
Mhm.
because I'm just me. And some people would say she's super funny. Other people would say, no, she's not funny at all. So, you know, it's just, I mean, who I am, as who do you perceive me? And it
Uh,
depends on a lot of things. So, how do you interact with me? Are you kind? Are you approachable? Are you friendly? Then you will probably see me as someone who's pretty easygoing. If you're demanding all the time and you're not crossing boundaries, then you will probably say, she's a mean bitch. Depends, you know, it has a range. So, but I think the most important thing is I'm just me, whatever that means. And I know that I have a lot of good personality traits. And I know that I have some that I'm not that proud of. But I'm human. I'm making mistakes. I'm learning. I'm growing. And that's something I wish for every one of us.
I love that so much. And you're so right. I think that we're never just one thing all the time. And we are going to show up differently depending on who we're interacting with. And, that reminds me of who I used to be before. I felt like I needed to fit into this box. I felt like, and even as I'm like thinking about it and I was hearing you. I feel myself kind of getting teary too because my heart kind of like goes for that version of me who kind of tried to fit into this box. And I felt like if people perceived me in one way, I had to be that way all of the time. Or if I showed up in one way in with a specific person or in a specific space, then I had to be that way all of the time. And it didn't give me room to just be and just show up in different ways all of the time. And I think oftentimes what happens is we get kind of messages from other people like, oh, if you show up one way with one person and a different way with another person, then you're being fake, then you're being inauthentic. And so I struggled with that a lot, right? And now I love your answer so much because you're so right and more people need to know that we aren't just one thing and we're constantly growing and evolving and we are going to be one way one day and in another way another day, and that's okay as long as it feels genuine and true to you. Then it doesn't really matter if it's different from day to day.
Yes, I love this so much, especially you said when I'm a certain way with one person, then I'm expected to be like this all the time. And I'm expected to be this with this person again, over and over again. And I can remember situations, I always was the strong one, the tough one. You gotta figure it out. So I wasn't allowed to cry or to feel insecure or to watch a romantic movie and cry my eyes out. And that is something that has changed. I'm feeling my emotions without dumping them on people, but I'm absolutely aware I'm a little bit sad, maybe. Now I'm excited, whatever I am. And here comes something to my mind that's a little bit out of context, but it's helpful. When I have my daughter, and she is the greatest teacher of all. When you have a chance to watch children, we were talking about emotions, and you said emotions are designed to flow freely, and that's exactly that. If you look at a child, she came in and she was cheery and absolutely sad and unhappy. And now she's one of the happiest girls in the world. And that changes within less than 2 seconds. So we're not, it's not designed that we stick with an emotion and we are staying the same and we are not reacting and interacting with our environments. I think it's a co-creation.
Mhm.
It's if I go to a place and I'm stressed and I'm rude and I'm just not very nice to be around, with a high probability that's what I will get back, because people think, who is this annoying person? So that might be one solution. Another might be that somebody's saying, oh, this lady is pretty stressed. I give her a smile. Maybe I can make her day a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So with our thinking, our feelings, the way we show up, we are sending invitations the whole time.
Mhm.
And other people can decide if they take us up on our invitation or if they send a different one back.
Mhm.
So I think that's the part of the co-creation.
Mhm.
But we are not responsible for everything. We are just only responsible for our part, while at the same time being just so human. We are just so imperfect. We mess up so many things, and at the same time we can be so kind, loving, and beautiful and amazing. And that's another thing that all this work made me realize. I was really, really struggling with the duality of life.
Mhm.
Day and night, good and bad, black and white, and the gray and colorful tones in between. They were like, no, it has to be either right or either wrong, because I mean, what's this thing in the middle? I can't tackle it. I can't. Oh, I really hated it because I didn't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
Because if it's right, it's like thumbs up, okay, that's good. If it's wrong, okay, no, I don't want that. But what if it's neither nor? And I really learned to play the colorful palette and let it be what it is in this moment.
Yes.
So, does it make sense what I'm saying?
1000%. Yes, that makes complete sense. I love that. And you're so right, because so often we do get stuck in this black and white thinking, right? All or nothing. But really what you're saying is like life is about being in that gray, right? Life is about being able to kind of be flexible and flow, right? And not have like this all or nothing thinking. I just want to mention the children piece, going back to what you were saying about your daughter, right? Like one moment she was crying and now she's like the happiest, right? And that's what I love about children, that children are, they live in the present moment, right? And that's something that we lose as we get older. We don't live in the present moment, right? We get stuck with the future, what's happening in our minds, right? But when we start reconnecting with ourselves and our bodies, we can start to live in the present moment like children do.
I love this so much. This is it's so profound, it's so full of wisdom, because it's exactly this. The moment we can connect to our bodies, that's the moment we can land in the present moment again. That's the moment where we don't need to run away from something that we don't want to feel, where we don't need to keep ourselves busy to not fall into the present moment and all the emotions that come with that might be uncomfortable to
Mhm.
feel,
Yeah.
at least at first.
Yeah.
And I think it's the mixture. Sometimes I need to think about the future. There are some things that, unfortunately, in this world, we need to prepare for, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So having the ability to think about the future is valuable, but that's not where our life takes place. We are living right here, right now, in this present moment. And I love the concept of the present moment because we can't hold it, we can't keep it, we can't even get our grip on it. Because the moment I think, oh, I have it, it's already gone. It's just flow.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally. I love that. This reminds me of something that me and my friend would say all of the time, like this is the youngest we're going to be in this moment right now, right? And then we would say, and now in this moment, this is the youngest we're ever going to be. And now in this moment, right? And so it goes back to just being very, very present because every moment is fleeting, right? But as long as you're in the present, right, in every moment, then you can kind of live a little bit more intentionally. But I do agree with you that there are times where we do need to plan and we do need to think about the future and we want to be prepared for certain things. But again, it goes back to that balance, right? It doesn't have to be always planning or always in the present moment. It's we can go back and forth between planning and being prepared and being in the present moment, right? It is having that balance. And when we think about going back and forth, pendulation, right? That's exactly what our bodies and our nervous systems are naturally doing. We're naturally pendulating up and down. We have flexibility and flow. So, oh my gosh, I love this conversation. I wish that we could just like go on and on and on. But first, I just want to thank you so much for being here with me and my audience today and just sharing a little bit about your story. Thank you so much for having this juicy conversation with me, and thank you for just sharing your wisdom and your gems. I really appreciate you. And I would love for you to share how people can connect with you and what you have going on, what services or programs that you have, and how people can work with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you so, so, so much for having me. I enjoyed our conversation so much. And yeah, we could go on for hours. I love this. There is so much wisdom in this. Thank you for asking these awesome questions so that we can dig for the wisdom. That was just fabulous. Thank you so much.
Mm.
Yeah, if you would like to connect with me, you can find me in my virtual home on my website. That is nadjahagen.com.
Mhm.
If you think like, oh yeah, boundaries, that's a thing, I actually need to learn how to implement them, then I have a free gift for you.
Mm.
So I have a checklist. It's called 8 Steps to Healthy Boundaries,
Mhm.
where I guide you through the whole boundary process. Sounds complex, but it's not. It's just a 2-pager. It's pretty simple.
Mhm.
And it makes sure that you know exactly when to set a boundary, how to communicate it kindly and transparently, and make sure that it's being respected. So if this is something you want to get your hold on, you can get it at nadjahagen.com/boundaries minus checklist. Yeah, that's the thing. Everything else you would like to learn about me or connect with me, you will find on my website. So just take a look.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I will add that into the show notes so that people can access it very easily. Also, Nadia, I know that you live in Germany. Do you work with everyone around the world? Who do you work with?
I work internationally, so
Okay.
I need to adjust my time, my schedule a little bit to my daughter and the availability. But apart from that, we can make everything work. So yeah, I work internationally. My main focus are high achieving women
Mhm.
who do everything they're supposed to do to create a happy and fulfilled life.
Mhm.
Who are having, as so many of us, a perfect life, you
Mhm.
know, paper perfect,
Yeah.
and still this nagging feeling like I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not excited. What is wrong with me? And I can tell you, nothing is wrong with you. There's a lot of things that are wrong, but nothing wrong with you. So,
Yes. Oh, I
um,
love that.
if this is you, get in touch with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nadia. I appreciate you and I hope to continue to connect with you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you absolutely loved this episode, I would so appreciate it if you subscribed and left a review on Apple Podcast, or take a screenshot and share this episode on social media. Don't forget to tag me at tatiana.holistic.coach. The more nervous systems we reach, the more generational cycles we break, and the more we contribute to a kinder and safer world. And if you're looking for somatic healing services, send me a DM and I'd love to chat on how I can support you. I'll see you in the next episode.